listening to Practice on Purpose, where physicians can explore how to set up their career on purpose from the very beginning to stay connected to their purpose for their entire career. I'm Dr. Nicole Eull, a health psychologist with decades of experience in healthcare, from the front lines of a level 1 trauma center to leadership in one of the largest healthcare systems in the country. I'm passionate about physician well-being and creating mentally healthy workplaces. If you want to thoughtfully establish a career that aligns with your values and passions and ensures a long and rewarding life as a physician, then you've come to the right place. Today, we're going to continue talking about student loan repayment. We're talking to Joy Sorensen, the president and founder of Navigate Student Loans. Welcome, Joy.
Hi, Nicole. It's great to be here.
Great. We're so glad to have you. And I'm so excited for you to share the things that we've talked about and share them with our listeners. Why don't you take a minute to introduce yourself in your own words?
I'll be glad to. Thank you. Navigate Student Loans started when I had a question from a client when I was a financial advisor, and I couldn't find anybody to refer him to. And so I got smart on student loans. And what I found was that he wasn't alone. Lots of physicians have questions about student loans, and it's hard to find good advice. And so ended up saving 30 clients between $40,000 and $400,000 on their student loans.
That sounds great.
And I said to myself, this is all I want to do. And that's when the business was born.
Okay, so you saw a need and you filled the need.
Exactly right.
So your business model is a little bit different than the usual loan repayment company. Do you want to share with us a little bit about how you're unique?
Oh, of course. Thank you. Most of our clients are healthcare organizations, healthcare employers. And so they often bring us in as an employee benefit for their employed physicians. And then we work with all of their candidates and existing attending physicians on their student loan plans at no charge to the physician. And then sometimes a physician will have a colleague that's not part of the same entity. And so they'll refer them over to us. And so for individual physicians, we just charge a flat fee. It's $1,000 straight up. And that covers our initial consultation and unlimited advice and future number crunching for the lifetime of their loans.
So you're primarily working with companies that value this for their physicians and are providing this as a service.
That's right.
Are there any other ways that your approach is unique, that you think it might be unique from other companies?
We really believe, well, first of all, it's an honor we feel to work with doctors. We've worked with thousands of doctors, and so we bring an approach that's pretty practical. A doctor once told me, just tell me what the problem is, what I need to do about it, and who to call if it doesn't work, right? And so that's really what we do. We're very consultative. We're also very supportive. We know that doctors are very special people in our communities, and they have a lot of stress. And our whole goal is to make their life easier. Just recently, we did some surveys of our existing customers and asked them, so what did you like about the service you got from Navigate? And I was expecting them to say, oh, we love your calculators. We love your spreadsheets, with all the numbers. And instead, what we heard was, you gave me freedom.
Right.
I feel like I have my life again. These kinds of emotional values that we weren't expecting to hear, but when I look back at it, it makes a lot of sense.
And that's exactly why we wanted to have an episode on loan repayment, because it really does affect the choices that physicians make with what jobs they're going to take, where they're going to take the jobs, the settings. This loan repayment is definitely a factor in their lives. What do you think, as someone is looking for a job, if there's things on the table around loan repayment or loan reimbursement or loan, what do you think people should consider when they're thinking about their student loans?
Yeah. Well, there's so much to think about, Nicole. First off, just hearing you ask that question reminds me that there are so many different ways that an employer will talk about a student loan benefit. right? They might call it a loan incentive or loan assistance, or it might be a forgivable loan to support a physician with their loan. It might be additional compensation. It might be student loan counseling like we do. And so often it can be confusing for the candidate, the physician candidate, to even figure out what they're talking about, especially on the front end, and then to figure out, so how does that compare to the other offer I have from another organization? Right. So that's the first place. Is my recommendation would be to try to get as much clarity as you can, either by asking your physician recruiter, your in-house physician recruiter, or your colleagues that have already been through the system. I don't, we work with a lot of healthcare systems, and I don't think anyone's out to get the physicians, right? I think in this conversation, people really want physicians to be satisfied, right? To be happy in their practice. But still, it's confusing.
So first thing is define the terms, right? Clarify what the terms mean so that you really know what you're being offered.
Exactly.
Anything else they should think about?
Yeah. The other thing I think of is right now, the size of medical education debt is really big, and physicians feel this. And so often it becomes a primary consideration when thinking about a job.
For sure.
And in my experience, unless the loan balance is really high, and I'm talking like 500,000 or more, or unless the compensation is really high, right? And so the loans can be paid off relatively quickly. But for the majority of physicians with sort of the median salary, with the median loan amount, say, $250,000 to $400,000, really there is a loan plan that you could pick regardless of what employer or employment organization you'd go with. What we see, and I'm sort of talking around it here, I apologize, Nicole, public service loan forgiveness is the biggest loan benefit for physicians, and that requires working at a governmental or a nonprofit health institution. And so a lot of folks in residency are telling us, they must have a job that qualifies for public service loan forgiveness. And in what we've seen, that's not true in the majority of the cases. So I would say, look broadly, run your numbers, figure out really what can work for you, and look at all the options.
So don't put your loans right at the front of the gate when deciding where you're going to work.
Exactly. What kind of practice do you want? What setting do you want? What kind of support do you want? Where's your mother-in-law live if you're having children? Those kinds of really important things. The leadership, the philosophy of the organization, those kinds of things.
It sounds like you're saying that there's always a way. There's always a way to make that loan work, and maybe even make it work for you, but that you should pick what you really want to do and what's meaningful for you first, and then you can help people figure out the rest.
Exactly. It's always a piece of the puzzle, but usually doesn't need to be the primary piece.
Okay. And I do think that a lot of people look at salary and loans, right? That's where they start. But I think it's important also to really consider lifestyle and what you want your life and work life to look like. I usually tell trainees, think of that first and then work your way backwards from that, because you're going to be in this career for a really long time, hopefully. Right. So you, I think, have some case studies for us that will further illustrate these points. So you've done some good homework and are prepared to share with us some examples that might help our listeners understand better what you're talking about.
I do have some cases to share with you today, Nicole. So this story, this is actual live person. I've changed some of the details so don't break any confidentiality. She was a customer of ours when she was in training. She was on her third year of her residency. She had called back because she wanted help to figure out which offer, she just wanted to compare her offers. She was actually taking the call in the stairwell of her residency program, and she was in tears. She was in tears because of the stress of having to make this big decision. And just the details were swimming. So in her case, she had an offer from her father that was in private practice, and he really wanted to retire. He wanted time to work with her, transition the practice over to her. Amazing opportunity for her. She had a number of nonprofit offers that were different kinds of, like they're hospitalists with outpatients. 3 of them were nonprofit organizations that qualified for public service loan forgiveness. And then she had one offer that was a for-profit organization that she was really intrigued by, but it offered, it would take public service loan forgiveness off the table.
I see.
And so we crunched the numbers, and it was kind of interesting to see that if you look at that first comparing offers on the first line where it says monthly, these are the payment amounts in these different columns. And you'll see that in the first 3 columns, the payments are relatively similar. $270 as a resident, right? And her first year as an attending. And then as an attending physician, her payments would be, $2,400 basically is what they're going to be. And that held the same across the 3 different nonprofit organizations. Even though the salaries were slightly different, the hours were different, some were on call, but it ended up, those monthly payments are about the same, which was very interesting to both of us. And then the monthly payment for the for-profit, the non-public service loan forgiveness eligible was going to be much higher. So instead of $2,400 a month, it was $3,058 a month. All right, so $600 more off the bat. And that was actually what the payment would be working with her father too.
Wow.
Right. So right away, it was starting to look like public service loan forgiveness would be better because that monthly payment would be smaller. Then we looked at the total amount paid, and that's towards the bottom of the slide. And she already had almost 3 years of public service loan forgiveness time in, that takes 10 years of payment since she had 2.5 years in residency that was already counting. And so when we looked at the total amount that she was going to pay at the end of 7+ years, it would be about between $140,000 and $150,000 altogether. All right. So that was pretty good because her loan balance was $300,000, right? So she's going to pay a lot less. If we looked at the job that she was really interested in, which was with her father or with the for-profit organization, she's going to end up paying a lot more. So the for-profit organization was offering her $125,000 loan assistance that she could use to pay off part of her loans. And so the total she would pay would be $241,000 on her loans, which would be $100,000 more, $90,000 to $100,000 more than with the other positions. And with Dad, there was no signing bonus. There was no loan assistance.
Come on,
right?
Dad.
So that would be she would pay the full $366,000, which was her loan balance. So that's part of the story. Okay, we're talking about a lot of numbers and looking at this case. The second part of this, when you're working about, okay, which offers are better. So we looked at the loan side. Now we have to look at the salary side, right? You mentioned both of those when we started.
Right.
So her salaries for the for-profit started out $60,000 more. Okay, so it was $310,000 she was being offered by the nonprofits, basically, and the for-profit was $370,000. All right, so that first year she's making $60,000 more, and but the other thing was the salary increases on an annual basis. And these are kind of hard to project, right? Who knows, what salaries are doing in healthcare. But based on some estimates she had from colleagues in those different locations, the nonprofit had about a 3% annual increase, and the for-profit had a 5% annual increase. So when we ran all those numbers, her salary by the 10th year for the nonprofit would be $405,000. Her salary for the for-profit, $575,000. Okay, so now we're talking, she's going to pay an extra $90,000 on her loans, hypothetically, right? But she's going to make an additional $60,000 the first year and $170,000 by the 7th year, increasing every year.
Right.
So to her, it turned out that job with the for-profit that she really wanted, it was the best fit for her in terms of what she wanted for practice, was the one she took.
Hmm.
And then what she did was she negotiated her hours so she could have a week off every month. And she went out to be with her dad at his practice.
Wow. Well, first
Isn't
of
that
all,
amazing?
this woman is amazing. She's got what, 5 job offers
She
and
does, yeah.
people fighting over her and throwing loan repayment at her. So kudos to her. I hope all of you listening have an equal, ample amount of choices on the table. So that's so fascinating how you really need to have someone sit down and look at all the factors at play, because in the end, she'll have made quite a bit more money
Right.
over time. And all of these slides will be available in the show notes so that you can take a look at them while you're telling this story, and it'll be helpful for those of you who are visual. So such a fascinating story. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's we're in Minnesota, so we say every situation, like every snowflake, is unique. And so really makes sense, just like you said, to run those numbers.
Right. And that is something that I'm not sure if every loan repayment company offers that detail of
Yeah, that's a good question.
examination. I'm not sure if they offer the most effective, efficient way of paying off the loan. I'm not sure. I think there's probably varies company to company. So thank you for sharing that approach. If did you have any other cases, or was that the one?
That was it. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I like to close with some set questions that I ask everybody, just to remind our listeners that we're all working to stay connected to our purpose, and that our work can, in fact, in some ways, bring us closer to that. What do you think your greatest passion or purpose is?
I love that question, Nicole. Thanks for asking. For me, it's clearly to change the world. And
That's
so
a big one.
It is a big one. And I feel like if I can help a doctor have less on her shoulders, so she's able to serve the people in my community and her community on their huge health needs, I feel like I am changing the world.
Yeah, that's amazing. And there's so many people who this loan is the single stressor, or one of the major stressors of their lives. How do you stay connected to your purpose?
I love to garden, and so it's I'm changing the world in a very way that brings me joy. Right, I've got a dahlia behind me. Oops, which way is it?
I see that. Yeah.
Just got them all planted last weekend. Because my work is so clearly connected to my purpose, I really have to keep myself filled on a rest place and on a like a color and a beauty place in order to do my work well. And so gardening is what gives me that balance.
Well, Joy, if you ever run out of work at your garden, you're welcome to come down to my garden in Milwaukee and do some work.
Thank you. I'd love to.
So what's next for you?
Yeah, next for me, I will be doing some presentations at residency programs coming up next week, and some traveling to some conferences to help folks figure out how better to support physicians on their student loans.
Great. So if anyone listening wants to learn more about you, where can they look for that information?
I want to say clearly, because I've gotten feedback from this before, we really would love to work with a physician on their student loans. So don't feel like we're unapproachable. We really would love to work with you. So please reach out to us. You can go to www.navigatestudentloans.com, schedule a call for a free 15-minute call just to figure out if you think would be a good fit for you.
Or if your healthcare organization would be a good fit for your services, perhaps they can pass it along to the groups that they're working with as well.
That would be great.
So thank you so much for joining us, Joy. I think that our listeners will really appreciate the concreteness of the case study to really drive home how important this is, and that you do not have to manage this alone. And there's help out there to help you make these decisions in a very rational, clear, and concise way so that you make a super informed decision. So thanks again.
You're welcome. Thanks again for having me.
Thanks so much to Joy Sorensen for sharing her stories and her advice on loan repayment. Thank you for joining us. We hope that this show has you thinking about your own career and what action you can take to make it ideal for you right from the start. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and tell others to join us. We greatly appreciate your reviews and comments, which help us grow to a wider audience. If you want to stay in touch, email me at practiceonpurpose@heyinfluent.com. Let me know what topics you want us to explore in future episodes. And remember, build your practice on purpose in order to stay connected to your purpose. I appreciate you joining us on this journey. Let's keep exploring together. Until next episode.